Hi friends, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Here's what we're discussing today. I want to tell you a horror story. No, there won't be dragons or vampires or monsters hiding under the bed, no space aliens. It'll just be horror. Imagine you have faith in your religion, but you also realize that you live in an area of the world where similar beliefs sometimes conflict. You can believe 90% of what others believe, but if you believe one wrong thing, oops, you're a heretic who ought to be burned or stoned or hung or something like that. It's a part of the world where you're at where things are pretty rough, and there's an ongoing civil war. So it's not exactly a Hallmark Channel warm and fuzzy living environment. But you have hope. You have resources. So you pick up and you fly to the greatest country in the world. And you wind up in Portland, Oregon, and you begin attending worship services there in your religion, and you escape the disastrous civil war of Sudan. In just a few years, you go from refugee and immigrant to citizen in the world's best constitutional republic, protected by the doctrines of due process enshrined in the Constitution. You work hard and you build up a business, and eventually, in 2009, you make a trip to your former home country to visit relatives there and to work on your business. Now, it's only a few years since 9/11. While you're there, working on your business deals, you receive a cordial call from the U.S. Embassy, and they ask you if you'd like to come for lunch. They're holding a luncheon. Come to our luncheon. Is this the greatest country in the world or what? You're in a foreign country and they're going to throw you a luncheon. So you show up, but quickly you discover that you are on the menu. A squad of F.B.I. agents wants to know what your business is in Sudan, what's going on with the Portland Mosque you attend, and what involvement you have in terrorism. Now, American politicians are very big on the idea of not blaming all Muslims for terror, but apparently that has not filtered down to the FBI agents in the Sudan embassy. 2 FBI agents inform you that you can't return to the United States because the government has placed you on the no-fly list. That's the stick. Next comes the carrot. They offer to take some steps, pull some strings, and remove you from that no-fly list. All you have to do is agree to become an FBI informant and snitch on the other members of the Muslim community. Welcome to 2015 in the United States. Well, you're not really interested in doing that, so you tell the government to pound sand and leave the embassy, no doubt feeling both dismayed and betrayed. The last words of the FBI agent as you leave are, "Call us when you want to fly home." Well, a few weeks later, you fly to the United Arab Emirates. And while you're there, the authorities grab you off the street and interrogate you for 106 days at the request of the FBI. Unable to fly back to the United States, you end up in Sweden, where you're going to remain until February of 2015. But while you're there, you file a lawsuit against the United States government. You say, the government violated my rights to procedural due process. They failed to provide me either meaningful notice of my addition to the list or any appropriate way to secure redress. And you further claim that the government has placed you on the no-fly list for constitutionally impermissible reasons related to race, national origin, and religious beliefs. This is not a fictional story. Our hero here is not a fictional character. This is Yonas Fikre. He's a U.S. citizen, and without so much as a hello, he found himself on the no-fly list after he flew to Sudan. Now, some of us tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theorists might suggest that putting him on the list after he flew to Sudan was done explicitly for the purpose of turning him into a snitch, especially given the FBI agent's goodbye of, call us when you want to come home. Again, you have to assume that this is true. For the purpose of the decision that the court is making, they have to assume that these facts are the true facts. Keep in mind that they may not be. They have yet to be proved. So the case goes to the district court, and the very first thing the government does is it comes in and says, hey, you know what, it's 2016, we're going to take him off the no-fly list, so the case is moot. Not so fast there, geniuses. Since you control the list, and as the court notes in its opinion, no statute or publicly promulgated regulation describes the standard the government uses when adding individuals to or removing them from the list. Nothing could stop you from being added again tomorrow. But the district court went with the DOJ position and dismissed the case. So Fikre appealed. He took it up to the Ninth Circuit. And as I've said before, there have been many times when I've disagreed with the Ninth Circuit, but here they make the right call. They say, look, a party seeking to moot a case based on their own voluntary cessation of the challenged conduct must show that the conduct cannot reasonably be expected to recur. On remand, the government submitted a declaration asserting that based on the currently available information, and that's a key distinction, Mr. Fikre would not be placed on the no-fly list in the future, and the district court again dismissed Mr. Fikre's claim as moot. The Ninth Circuit once again reversed, holding that the government had failed to meet its burden because the declaration did not disclose the conduct that landed Fikre on the no-fly list in the first place, and there was nothing to ensure that he would not be placed back on the list for engaging in the same or similar conduct in the future, since we don't know what that conduct was. In the meantime, the Fourth Circuit, in a completely different factual situation, held that the government could moot the case in this way. So the Supreme Court, as we've talked about numerous times on the channel, had to take this case to clarify the split in the circuits, and that's what they've done. After reciting in greater detail the facts above, Judge Gorsuch, for a unanimous court, held that the government failed to demonstrate the case was moot. A court with jurisdiction has a virtually unflagging obligation to hear and resolve questions properly before it. But the converse is also true, and a federal court must dismiss a case that is moot. The limited authority vested in the federal courts by Article 3 of the Constitution to decide cases and controversies means that the federal courts may no more pronounce on past actions that have no continuing effect in the world than they may neglect their obligation to hear and resolve questions properly before them. This does not imply that a defendant may automatically moot a case by the simple expedient of suspending its challenged conduct after it's been sued. Instead, a defendant's voluntary cessation of challenged practice will moot a case only if the defendant can show that the practice cannot reasonably be expected to recur. And of course, when they're citing cases here, they're citing all kinds of Supreme Court cases. The standard holds for governmental defendants no less than for private defendants. Applying these principles to the uncontested factual allegations here, this case is not moot. While the government's representation that it will not relist Mr. Fikre may mean that his past conduct is not enough to warrant relisting, that does not speak to whether the government might relist him if he engages in the same or similar conduct in the future. The government contends that because Mr. Fikre has been delisted since 2016 and has presumably interacted freely with his co-religionists during that time, it's unlikely he will be facing relisting in the future. Now, I want to point out that they are essentially admitting here that it is religion that played a role in his being listed in the first place. Otherwise, why would they reference co-religionists? Anyway, this too is insufficient to warrant dismissal. A defendant's speculation about a plaintiff's actions cannot make up for a lack of assurance about its own. The burden here is on the defendant to establish that it cannot reasonably be expected to resume its challenged conduct, and nothing the government offers here satisfies that standard. The government claims the Ninth Circuit made a mistake by requiring it to repudiate its past conduct to prove mootness. But what matters is not whether a defendant repudiates its past actions, but what the defendant can prove about its future conduct. Coming, as this case does, in a preliminary posture, The court's judgment is necessarily a provisional one. As I said, it has to ensure or it has to act as though all of these facts are true. As the complainant's allegations are tested, different facts may emerge that may call for a different result. But adhering to traditional mootness principles, the government has so far failed to meet its burden. Now, in the shadow of the Islamist attack on Israel over the weekend, there is surely a lot of anti-Muslim rhetoric on social media today. It's important to remember that in our free and open society, persons are considered innocent until proved guilty. But the no-fly list doesn't seem to work that way. You are guilty until you prove you're innocent, until you agree to snitch on other people. And that's wrong. Just as you have no obligation to testify against yourself, why should you have an obligation to inform on other people? That's why we have FBI agents and why we pay them. The thing to take away from this case is not that the court is a fan of Islamist terror. It's a fan of the good old Constitution. It demands that even when they are outside the country, FBI agents must act consistent with our national standards and not in an arbitrary and capricious way. Moreover, since this case was dismissed before discovery, as I said earlier, the facts have not been discovered. We don't know what the emails between the FBI agents and headquarters say. We don't know what their reports say. We don't know what their interview notes say. We don't know very much at all about what the FBI agents in the Sudan embassy actually did from their point of view, from the objective facts contained in the actual record. So even though the case is dismissed and is now reinstated, there are many hurdles yet to cross before Mr. Fikre gets a judgment against the government. And it will be interesting to see what happens. And it's important not to believe everything you read in a complaint, especially one filed in federal court, until you see proof of it in writing or otherwise. So that's what I have for you today. It's an interesting case. It essentially upholds our standards that we don't judge people by their religion. We don't judge people by their country of origin. We judge them by the content of their character, as Martin Luther King Jr. wanted us to. And when we carry that forward, we make the country a much better place. That's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions, put them in the comments down below. Like, share, subscribe, all those things that everybody always asks you to do. They'd help me too. If you have the opportunity today, do something kind for someone. And then, when you're done, come on back down here, meet me at the beach tomorrow, and we'll have a little further conversation. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.